It's interesting. Ronnie Weidman, you guys who know him, he sent me a text as I was just coming up here. He said, "What a journey." He said, "Back in October, I thought there's no chance we'd get here." He said, 72 hours ago, our chances of having our name called out was very bleak. We didn't know, but here we are, and we got a chance. So reading that put it into perspective. But, this is the first time, that I've not been able to be with my team and watch the selection show. That's kind of a cool thing. Obviously, you do it. But we on Zoom, we got together, and I congratulated them and, talked a little bit about our opponent and just kind of went from there. So that was strange. But here's where we're at. And, again, give you this, and then we can talk a little bit. Right now, the majority of our team is contact traced and in quarantine because of the positive case that happened after the Syracuse game. And again, we're going to keep testing daily, and our medical people, who are outstanding, are working with the NCAA to follow every protocol. I mean, that's why our name was called. And the timing is never a good time to have it, and this is not ideal, but if you're going to have it, we took it about to the last day that you could have a positive case. But anyways, our people are working, our doctors are working with the NCAA medical people to follow all the protocols. And then, our quarantine is until Thursday. Once we find out our game time, I think that comes out tonight. Does it come out tonight? Okay. We'll probably travel. I know there's been some stuff said, but we will travel as a team to Indy on Friday, perhaps, and then go from there. And this certainly is a unique way. We'll be using Zoom a lot with video. It's certainly a unique way to prepare for the NCAA tournament. But I'm thankful that the NCAA gave our young men the chance, because they earned their way into it, the chance to get into this tournament, considering our circumstances. And again, we did follow, and we've met all the things, and some other teams I think are in this boat. So, that's kind of where it's at. And, understand I'll learn a lot more about Ohio. I know that they're a talented team that can score, well coached, very good players, all that stuff. But I think the text that I read to start put it into perspective for us, because you never know. This is such a unique and strange year. So that's where we're at. I can answer a few questions and just give you the details on that stuff. So hopefully that gives you the information pretty much that you needed to know.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started with questions. We'll start with Jeff White, Mike Barber, and Preston Willett.
Tony, if the testing goes well this week, will you be able to practice as a team at all in Charlottesville? And if the testing goes well, how close to a full complement of players would you have for the game?
Yeah, I mean, we have one positive case, I said that, and the majority of our team's in quarantine. So if the testing goes well, we'll have the majority of our team to play. So that's that. We'll know more as this thing goes on, but the quarantine ends Thursday, and hopefully we'll be able after that testing goes well, to have a normal practice. And so that's kind of the plan. And again, not ideal, but again, that's why we're trying to follow the protocols, working with, obviously the university and the NCAA people, and they're very aware of our situation. And again, we're doing it right. So that's kind of where it stands, and that's why I read the text.
Tony, the protocols are so complicated, at least for us. I would imagine they are for you. There's so much to them. Did you spend the last few days kind of nervous, in limbo? Did you have a good sense like, hey, we're going to be okay? Or were you sweating it out like, I don't know what's coming?
Well, we had to initially when we, after the Syracuse game, we found out, I didn't know, because I'm like, at first it was like, oh, we want to play in the ACC tournament. We want a chance to, go against Georgia Tech. And then when I realized that wasn't there, then it's like, okay, you're kind of counting the numbers. I didn't know. It was more about the testing. And we're a few days into our quarantine, and the tests have been negative, which has been important. That was the nervous part. And I think I've said that to you before. You don't want to have a positive now. Everybody's holding their breath, and well, sure enough, why did I say that? And we had one. But But, there is enough time, and that's why the NCAA, they're not breaking any rules or changing anything. They're just, we're going to have enough time. It's just not the ideal prep for it. But that's the nervous part for me, or the uncertain part is like, all right, Ethan, when we got our tests, tell me there's not a negative, nothing's spread and nothing's going on. And that's why, in some ways we're going to be the safest team if we get down there, right? Because we're here, we're quarantining, and so that part should make people feel good. That was the part that we were kind of hoping or being hopeful for, and that's been good so far, of course.
Thank you.
Coach, you talk about that prep time, and in one way you've crossed one of those hurdles with just getting into the tournament now and kind of having that. But what is this prep going to be like, compared to years past?
Yeah, it's different. It is. This is, as I said, it's unique circumstances. So it's just a different year. So you're not going to be able to do more Zoom time, more video time, and things like that. So it's like I mentioned, it is what it is. But again, we're getting a chance to go down there and get ready, and we'll make the most of it for sure. And again, respecting who we're playing, it's a good team and all that stuff. So I wish I, could give you more, but that's about where it's at.
Next three, we'll have Bennett Conlon, David Teal, and Gene Wong. You just took your hand away. Jerry Ratcliffe.
Coach, I was curious, what's the timeline to get the person who tested positive back to the team?
Say that again, Bennett?
Yeah, the timeline to get the person who tested positive back.
Yeah. The test back, or when they can come back?
No, sorry, the person, the individual who tested positive.
Yeah.
When can they rejoin the team?
That's it's whatever. It's we've been reading it for about a year, right, on the news. Isn't it 10 days, no symptoms, or it's that. So that person will not be able to be in the tournament, the first and second rounds, if you're fortunate enough to advance.
Tony, did you learn of this positive test immediately after the Syracuse game? Can you walk us through that timeline in Greensboro and how it all unfolded?
Yeah, you after the game you test, and then we got word that I've been later after that evening. After the game, what time was our game? We played the noon game, so we got word,
yeah.
After the results came back, there's obviously they have to do the testing, and said there was a positive, and and like, okay, wait a second, obviously we retest it, and just to make sure, and very similar, I think, probably to what Duke did in their situation, and it was because of the contact tracing, which I started, because of those Connexon chips, when you play a game and you have a positive player, because of the proximity of huddles, you can space, you can do stuff, but a game with huddles in the locker room and all that, it knocks out the majority of your team, and that's kind of what happened, and that's why we couldn't continue. So once we found out, once we retested, said, all right, where are we at, and looked at, okay, what do the Connexon chips say? Is there enough guys to be able to play? And obviously with that contact tracing, we weren't able to. So that all was going on, and we didn't get the secondary tests. I'm sorry, the lights went out. I don't know if that messed up anything. They don't need to see. There you go. Testing didn't come back, so we weren't completely sure. We were waiting for the secondary test results just to see, and that didn't come back till like early in the morning on Friday. So that was kind of the process. So it wasn't a great night of sleep.
And is the young man asymptomatic? How is he feeling?
Yeah, that's not for me to discuss any of that stuff. Was directed to, and rightly so. But everything's so far so good. But I'll pass along and getting into the details about that stuff.
Understood. Thank you.
Yep.
Jerry, I think you're up next.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Jerry.
Okay. Tony, having gone through this before this season, does that give you any insight into how to prepare for a game under these circumstances? And is there any situation where any of your players are allowed to get up shots in an isolated situation?
I mean, yeah, you do the best you can, Jerry, and yeah, a lot of teams have gone through these pauses, and you make the most of it. And obviously, they're allowed nothing right now, as a team or as a group, but you have to keep your fitness up and do some things conditioning. And actually, that was important. Dr. Hainline wanted to make sure that there'd be some physical fitness, and guys can do that individually, following all the protocols. And then, if need be, yes, they can get up some shots individually for the time being. But it's all, again, under the protocols, and that's the stuff with the NCAA and making sure we're following that stuff.
Okay, up next we'll have Danielle Stein, Brian Smith with 13 News Now, and Wes McElroy.
Tony, you seem fairly optimistic about your ability to be playing come Saturday. Is that the shared attitude of the players on the team, especially just given the last 72 hours with kind of a roller coaster up and down of the news that they've been hearing and all of that?
I believe so, yeah. No, I think you have to. As I said, it's a unique prep. It's not ideal. We understand that for going into it, but the opportunity is now presented to us, assuming obviously you pass the tests and get the negatives and do that. So you just make the most of it and get as ready as you can in the ways that you can, and that's sort of where it's at. But I think that's my job as a coach, to be real with them, but also to trying to breathe life and hope, and here's the opportunity. I remember when I told the team, we have a positive, we're not going to be able to play against Georgia Tech today. And looking at Thomas and looking at Sam and looking at Jay, and then it was kind of like, well, what does this mean for the, so where that went, that was rough. And I didn't know at that time, then you get all the information. Again, our medical staff and the university and the NCAA, we got together and they did a great job, because there's so many things you don't know. This is uncertain. So I think because we saw our name, because we've had negative tests, that's why we're optimistic and we have that chance. And again, that's our guys earned this opportunity. And that's why there is a cause for, we go in it grateful, humbly, and going to be as ready as we can given the circumstances, with all due respect, with respect for Ohio, who we play on Saturday at whatever time.
Tony, is it also one of those situations too? You're a positive person, but this is one of those circumstances where you have no control over this. How stressful is this for you as a coach, or maybe even your players, because you're on pins and needles? You work so hard to get to this point. How do you kind of keep your players at ease? You mentioned that, but how do you deal with that?
We talk a lot, and you guys maybe have heard me say this before. There's a control the controllables, right? But I like to use the words hold it with open hands, and that's all you can do. And this is life. We talked about that. This isn't, it's not a life and death situation, but this is things come your way. You have to adjust. And again, that idea of let's just sort of a step at a time, sort of living the day in the moment here, but holding this with open hands is the best way, I guess I can say it to them. And I think our guys understand it. And yeah, I think the stressful part was that Friday and then that day and then, kind of Saturday, and kind of continuing the conversations and finding out and waiting for the tests. We've sort of been dealing with that all year, but then this all of a sudden magnified it. But then, once we got the proper conversations, the proper information, okay, this is looking like a possibility as long as we're going to be, not test positive. So that part feels better. And again, that's why that text I read you to start, I don't mean to keep going back to it, but okay, here we are now. So good, Lord willing, we'll show up and we'll be ready to go to the best of our abilities. And that's what's in our control. And again, that's what you learn through these things.
Thank you.
Yep.
Tony, just what did you and the docs recommend to the guys when you talked about the conditioning and just staying in shape? What were some of the specifics that they are able to do and that you told them to do?
That's the stuff I already talked about. It can't be anything. It's just kind of on their own and doing stuff. Nothing like with a group right now. It's just all individual stuff and making the most of it that way, but kind of been through that.
All right, we'll take our last three for Coach from Olivia Garvey from ABCDC and Mike Barber and Bennett Conlon.
Hey, Coach, congratulations. Sorry if I'm re-asking this question. My computer keeps freezing. What was your message to the team after your guys' name was called, and what do you think your message will be throughout this entire tournament?
Yeah, it was, as I said at the start of it, I've never had you're always with your team when the selection, your name's called, whether, you're together and you celebrate that. So we celebrated it on Zoom, like I guess more of a realistic or a reality of this whole year. And it was just like, hey, I congratulated them and said you earned your way, and kind of talked a little bit about the things I'm talking to you. Look where we were on Friday, not sure, now we're here. And let's be grateful, let's move forward, let's control what we can control, and then talked a little bit about Ohio, the little bit we know, and obviously now we'll get to work on that. And just really that was the extent of it. All kind of that's what in prep for the NCAA tournament, all this stuff, it just sort of happens real time. So that's where we're at, and the message will be thankful, be hungry, respect the situation, and let's go.
Tony, you mentioned be hungry. You also mentioned looking at some of those seniors in the locker room when you had to break the news to them. How much drive, hunger do you kind of see in these guys after not getting to play in the NCAAs last year, after getting the end of the ACC taken away? Does this seem like a team that's just kind of raring to get back out there?
Well, sure. I think everybody, you try to earn your way into playing in the NCAA tournament, and all the teams last year, those guys that didn't get to play in it, and then have qualified again this year, I think they're excited about it. Young people are so resilient. You see that in a lot of ways, and they want that opportunity. And so that's, I think, like I said, Friday, you could see the look in their eyes. So I think this breathed life into them. So yeah, I think they're certainly hungry and certainly looking forward to that chance in Indianapolis.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Coach, I think you have to quarantine when you get to Indianapolis. How does that work for your team? Are you able to practice if you get in there on Friday? I guess what's that process for your team like?
Yeah, that's where, some teams are in this situation. You have to provide or present 2 negative tests 12 hours apart. That's what has to happen before your game, before you play. And, obviously there's a little bit of time to get the results back. So that's kind of where it'll be. So, again, not knowing the game time yet or anything, it could be a situation where you practice here and you just show up at the game and play and go with it that way. So, again, that stuff I don't know all the details yet, and we'll get into that. But it's unique prep, but again, we got the chance, and so that's how it'll work. 2 negative tests 12 hours apart.